Imagine a hesitant, frequently ill young man who spent 5 years circling the globe, collecting beetles, sketching finches, and meticulously documenting geological formations, only to return home and spend 2 decades in quiet agony before publishing a single idea that would permanently shatter humanity's understanding of its own origins. He did not shout his discoveries from the rooftops, nor did he seek controversy or public acclaim. Instead, he retreated to a quiet countryside estate, surrounded by notebooks, preserved specimens, and an almost obsessive commitment to empirical truth. This is the extraordinary reality of a naturalist whose meticulous observations dismantled centuries of fixed biological dogma and replaced it with a dynamic, evidence-based framework that continues to shape every branch of modern science. His journey from a reluctant medical student to the architect of evolutionary biology is a masterclass in intellectual patience, demonstrating that the most transformative ideas often require not sudden inspiration, but relentless verification, courageous honesty, and the willingness to let data override deeply held assumptions. The genesis of this unparalleled scientific phenomenon began in the winter of 1809 in the historic market town of Shrewsbury, England. Born Charles Robert Darwin into a wealthy, intellectually prominent family, his early environment was steeped in scientific curiosity, literary tradition, and a deep appreciation for empirical inquiry. His grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, had already speculated about the transmutation of species, planting a subtle intellectual seed that would later germinate decades after his passing. His father, a successful physician, expected his son to follow a conventional professional path, initially steering him toward medical studies at the University of Edinburgh. However, the young Darwin found the surgical procedures of the era deeply distressing and the academic environment intellectually stifling. Rather than forcing himself into a predetermined mold, he gravitated toward natural history, spending his days collecting insects, attending lectures on geology, and learning taxidermy from a freed slave who taught him the meticulous art of specimen preservation. This early immersion in the natural world cultivated a methodical mindset and a profound respect for observable evidence, qualities that would later become the foundation of his scientific methodology. Recognizing that medicine was not his calling, his family redirected his education toward the clergy at the University of Cambridge, a path that traditionally offered intellectual freedom alongside vocational training. During these formative years, he immersed himself in classical literature, theology, and the emerging sciences, forming lasting relationships with influential botanists and geologists who recognized his analytical precision and field enthusiasm. He participated in geological surveys across Wales, mapping rock formations and studying stratification patterns, experiences that solidified his understanding of deep time and gradual geological transformation. More importantly, he developed a disciplined approach to field observation, learning to document environmental conditions, collect systematic samples, and cross-reference biological data with geographical context. These academic exercises were not mere exercises in academic compliance, but rather intensive training in scientific reasoning, preparing him for an opportunity that would unexpectedly alter the trajectory of his life and redirect the course of natural history. The defining catalyst arrived in the autumn of 1831, when he was recommended as a self-funded companion and naturalist to the captain of HMS Beagle, a naval vessel embarking on a multi-year hydrographic survey of South American coastlines and remote Pacific islands. The expedition promised rigorous scientific documentation, but its true significance lay in the unprecedented access it provided to diverse ecosystems, isolated habitats, and geological formations untouched by European academic tradition. Over the course of nearly 5 years, he traversed volcanic landscapes, explored dense tropical forests, examined fossilized remains of extinct megafauna, and documented the distribution patterns of flora and fauna across varying altitudes and latitudes. His meticulous record-keeping, combined with his willingness to endure extreme physical conditions, allowed him to gather an extraordinary volume of data that would later serve as the empirical foundation for a radical biological hypothesis. The voyage was not merely a journey of geographical discovery, but an intensive education in ecological interdependence, revealing how environmental pressures, geographic isolation, and resource availability shaped the survival and adaptation of living organisms. Among the most pivotal moments of the expedition occurred during the exploration of the Galápagos archipelago, a remote volcanic chain where isolation had produced highly specialized species that bore striking resemblances to mainland counterparts, yet exhibited distinct morphological variations. He documented subtle differences in tortoise shell shapes, noted the specialized beak structures of finches adapted to specific dietary niches, and catalogued the unique adaptations of marine iguanas and flightless cormorants. These observations did not immediately crystallize into a unified theory, but they planted persistent questions about how species diverged, how geographic barriers influenced biological development, and whether environmental pressures could gradually reshape physical traits over extended periods. His systematic approach to collecting, labeling, and contextualizing specimens ensured that each data point could be cross-referenced, analyzed, and integrated into broader ecological frameworks. The Galápagos findings, combined with his earlier studies of South American fossils and geological stratification, created a compelling pattern that challenged the prevailing assumption of fixed, unchanging biological forms. Upon returning to England in 1836, he transitioned from field explorer to rigorous analytical researcher, dedicating himself to the painstaking process of sorting, classifying, and interpreting the vast collection of specimens he had accumulated. He collaborated with leading specialists to identify species, commissioned detailed anatomical studies, and began synthesizing his observations into a coherent biological framework. The initial hypothesis of species transformation emerged gradually, shaped by his study of artificial selection in domesticated animals, his analysis of geological time scales, and his careful examination of reproductive patterns in wild populations. He recognized that natural variation existed within every species, that environmental pressures favored certain traits over others, and that these advantageous characteristics could be inherited by subsequent generations. This process, which he later termed natural selection, provided a mechanistic explanation for biological adaptation without requiring supernatural intervention or fixed design. However, the implications of this idea were profound, and he understood that presenting it prematurely could undermine its scientific credibility. Rather than rushing to publication, he embarked on a decades-long campaign of verification, intentionally subjecting his hypothesis to relentless scrutiny through experimental breeding studies, botanical surveys, and detailed anatomical research. He cultivated experimental gardens, corresponded with pigeon breeders, studied the behavior of earthworms, and meticulously documented the structural adaptations of orchids and climbing plants. Each project served as a test case, designed to strengthen his argument, anticipate counterarguments, and refine his understanding of hereditary mechanisms, ecological competition, and reproductive isolation. This methodical approach was driven by a deep commitment to scientific integrity and an awareness of the cultural and religious resistance his ideas would inevitably encounter. He also managed chronic health conditions that frequently limited his working hours, adapting his schedule to maximize productivity during periods of physical stability. The extended preparation period, while frustrating to some contemporaries, ultimately produced a body of evidence so comprehensive that it would withstand rigorous academic evaluation and fundamentally reshape biological science. The prolonged period of private research was abruptly interrupted in the summer of 1858, when he received a manuscript from a younger naturalist conducting fieldwork in the Malay archipelago. The document outlined a nearly identical mechanism of species transformation through environmental selection, demonstrating that independent observation and logical deduction could converge on the same scientific conclusion. Recognizing the priority of both researchers and committed to maintaining intellectual honesty, he arranged for a joint presentation of their findings to a leading scientific society, ensuring that the theory received formal academic recognition without compromising collaborative integrity. This pivotal moment accelerated the timeline for full publication, compelling him to condense decades of research into a single, accessible volume that would introduce his framework to a broader audience. The resulting work was carefully structured to guide readers through observational evidence, logical reasoning, and predictive conclusions, deliberately avoiding polemical language in favor of systematic demonstration. The publication of his landmark treatise in 1859 triggered an immediate and widespread intellectual upheaval, challenging entrenched theological doctrines, philosophical assumptions, and scientific classifications that had dominated academic discourse for centuries. The initial reception was characterized by intense debate, ranging from enthusiastic endorsement by progressive scientists to vehement opposition from religious authorities and conservative academics, who viewed the theory as a direct challenge to established cosmological narratives. Despite the controversy, the empirical rigor, comprehensive evidence, and predictive power of the framework gradually won over skeptical researchers, establishing a new paradigm that unified previously disconnected fields of biology, geology, and ecology. The work underwent multiple revised editions, each incorporating new data, addressing emerging criticisms, and refining terminology to enhance clarity and scientific accuracy. This iterative process demonstrated a commitment to ongoing verification, ensuring that the theory remained responsive to new discoveries and methodological advancements. Following the publication of his foundational text, he continued to expand his scientific contributions through specialized studies on human ancestry, sexual selection, plant movement, and soil ecology, each work building upon the original framework while exploring previously unexamined biological phenomena. His research into human evolution extended the principles of natural selection to anthropological and psychological domains, providing a systematic explanation for morphological continuity, cognitive development, and social behavior across primate lineages. Simultaneously, he maintained a quiet domestic life at his countryside residence, prioritizing family stability, intellectual correspondence, and methodical experimentation over public controversy. He cultivated a reputation for intellectual generosity, frequently mentoring younger researchers, sharing data openly, and encouraging collaborative inquiry across international scientific networks. His approach to fame remained characteristically restrained, focusing instead on the continuous accumulation of knowledge and the refinement of biological understanding. The enduring influence of his work extends far beyond 19th-century academic debates, fundamentally establishing the unifying framework for all modern biological sciences. His theory provided the conceptual foundation for genetics, paleontology, evolutionary developmental biology, conservation ecology, and medical research, enabling scientists to trace disease mechanisms, predict species responses to environmental change, and reconstruct the historical relationships between living organisms. The principles he articulated continue to guide contemporary research in genomics, computational biology, and climate adaptation, demonstrating the remarkable predictive durability of a framework built on empirical observation and logical inference. Educational institutions worldwide incorporate his methodology into scientific curricula, emphasizing hypothesis testing, data collection, and evidence-based reasoning as essential components of academic training. His approach to scientific inquiry remains a model for interdisciplinary research, illustrating how careful documentation, patient analysis, and intellectual humility can produce transformative knowledge that outlives its creator. From the coastal surveys of South America to the quiet study of an English country house, his intellectual journey remains a profound testament to the power of systematic observation, disciplined verification, and the courage to follow evidence wherever it leads. He did not seek to provoke controversy, nor did he claim absolute certainty, but instead presented a carefully constructed argument that invited scrutiny, testing, and refinement. His willingness to prioritize empirical truth over conventional wisdom, his dedication to methodical research despite chronic physical limitations, and his commitment to intellectual honesty established a new standard for scientific integrity that continues to shape modern research practices. The framework he developed transformed biology from a descriptive discipline into a predictive science, revealing the dynamic, interconnected nature of life on Earth and providing humanity with a deeper understanding of its own place within the natural world. His name endures as a permanent benchmark in scientific history, a reminder that the most profound discoveries often emerge not from sudden revelation, but from persistent curiosity, rigorous analysis, and the quiet determination to let reality speak for itself.